The A.J. Arberry Preface. The first rendering of Al-Quran into a Western language was made by the English scholar Robertus Retinensis in the 12th century at the insistence of Peter the Venerable, Abbot of Cluny. It was completed in 1143 of the Vulgar era and enjoyed a considerable circulation in manuscript. Exactly 4 centuries later, this medieval Latin version was published at Basel, the editor being Theodor Bibliander Buchmann of Zurich. It abounds in inaccuracies and misunderstandings, and was inspired by hostile intention. Nevertheless, it served as the foundation of earliest translations into modern European idioms. In 1647, André du Ryer, a gentleman of France, trading in the Levant, published a French translation, which took matters a little farther. Well, less blurring errors, but 2 years later, an English version of this appeared with the following curious title page: The Al-Quran of Muhammad, translated out of the Arabic into French by the Sieur de Ryer, Lord of Malazere and resident for the French king at Alexandria, and newly Englished for the satisfaction of all that desire to look into the Turkish vanities, to which is prefixed the life of Muhammad, the prophet of the Turks, and author of the Al-Quran, with a needful caveat or admonition for them who desire to know what use may be made, or if there be danger in reading Al-Quran. Such was the somewhat inglorious beginning of the first English interpretation of the Holy Book of Islam. A quotation or two from the translator's address to the Christian reader will help to illustrate the spirit in which this version was offered, and, well, at least at least Alexander Ross is admitting that even though Muhammad spoke Arabic and as far as I know, didn't encounter any Turks, that he was their prophet too. There being so many sects and heresies banded together against the truth, finding that of Muhammad wanting to the muster, I thought it good to bring it to their colors, that so viewing thine enemies in their full body, thou mayest the better prepare to encounter, and I hope to overcome them. It may happily startle thee to find him so to speak English, as if he had been made some conquest, as if he had made some conquest on the nation. But thou wilt soon reject that fear, if thou consider that his Al-Quran, the groundwork of the Turkish religion, hath already been translated into almost all languages in Christendom, at least the most general, as the Latin, Italian, French, etc., yet never gained any proselyte, where the sword, its most forcible and strongest argument, hath not prevailed. Well, no, actually, the areas where Islam was the strongest were areas that never had the fighting. Whether that's Arabia or Asia or down into Africa. And there are some gaps in the quote here. Thou shalt find it of so rude and incongruous a composure, so sparse with contradictions, which can't be mentioned by anybody who brings this up, but I guess some people try to make something up or try to twist something here and there, but blasphemies and obscene speeches and ridiculous fables that some modest and more rational Muslimin have thus excused it, that their Prophet wrote 120,000 sayings, where 3,000 only are good. Well, no, people afterwards wrote hundreds of thousands or even millions of accounts, and you narrow them down, you do end up with a much smaller number. It's not in the millions. Then maybe 120,000 sayings. Yeah, that could be once the whole thing's narrowed down. And it wasn't that only 3,000 were good, that 3,000 were to be considered, 3,000 events, as you could say. Because a lot of these things that have, narration 6,000 or narration 2,000 or something, it turns out they have a lot more narrations than that, which number in the book, right? The residue, as the impossibility of the moon's falling into his sleeve, the conversion and salvation of the devils and the like. Well, if humans have choice, can't other beings have choice too? What, the type of being that the devil is? None of their beings ever have a choice to do anything good ever again? That doesn't seem right. Are false and ridiculous. Again, false because their personal Christian belief disagrees with it, but not false because they can disprove it. So people got to learn to speak a little bit different. And then there's experiences that you don't agree with, interpretation of, Yet it is the whole esteemed so sacred that upon the cover thereof is inscribed, "Let none touch it, but he who is clean." There's the physical washing up, and that's something I've even practiced for other than the Quran. And then there's the intellectual and spiritual cleanliness of approaching it. There are the vulgar, nor are the vulgar permitted to read it, but live and die in an implicit faith of what the priests deliver. Therefore, the Christian reader, though some too conscious of their own instability in religion, and of theirs like the Turks in this, whose prosperity and opinions they follow, were unwilling this should see the press, yet I am confident that thou hast been so true a votary to the orthodox religion as to keep thyself untainted in their follies. This shall not hurt thee. And as for those of the batch, having once abandoned the sun, sun with a U, of the gospel, I believe that they wander so far into utter darkness, by following strange lights, and by this ignis fatuus of Al-Quran, such as it is, I present it to thee, having taken the pains only to translate it out of French, not doubting, though it hath been a poison that hath inflicted a very great, but most unsound part of the universe, it may prove an antidote to confirm thee in the health of Christianity. Now, the son of